My heart sank. I know I didn't sleep that night. I'd just come off the phone with Peter Rennie, and he's just explained to me that we're under investigation by the Forest Practices Board for not meeting the visual quality objectives in an area. I'm Garnet Muro, and in this module, I'm going to share with you some of my experience with a Forest Practices Board investigation, and we're going to shine a light on something that's more recent with the Port Alberni Inlet. So let's jump to it. Okay, so Forest Practices Board, obviously they're not the new kids on the block. In fact, they've been around for 20 years, so I suppose happy birthday is in order. Happy birthday, Forest Practices Board. It would have been very early in your time frame when I first met you. So what was I doing? Well, I was working for Ainsworth Lumber. It was the late 90s. And in fact, I know it was pretty early in my career because I got my RPF in 1994. And in 1995, I signed my very first silviculture prescription. And it was for cutting permit 143 block 1, which is in these images here. So this is actually being logged. So, you know, a couple years later, we were in there harvesting. Now, here's the situation, if I can just draw it up for you. We'd spent several years developing multiple cutting permits in the area. And over time, we'd met with the Gunlink Ratepayers Association. So this was the public. And they had a very strong concern about the harvesting in our area. And so we really wanted to go that extra step and, take time to go in the field in the summertime, in the wintertime. And, we met with them many, many, many times. And ultimately wanted to, develop a very strong level of trust in, what we're doing and belief in that we can do it. So we tried different things. We did narrow yarding corridors in Douglas fir. We did conventional stuff with clear cuts, and ultimately the key driver, well, there were several, but one of the key ones was visual quality objective. So here we are with our woodlands crew out meeting the public and on site during the harvest. Now, if you want to have a look at the absolute worst case scenario, which is the winter, snow on the ground, and showing that hard contrast, right there is the yarding corridor in the previous slide. So I'll just go back. So that yarding corridor is the one that's just up in the top right below the word Ainsworth there. And there it is again. So, all right, so we've proven we can do some good partial cutting, and we step back a little bit. That's what it looks like from the lake. This is all really good. So the next challenge we had was to turn around and face the other side of the lake. And in this case, we are proposing more clear cutting with partial cutting, a combination of the two. And so we thought, okay, well, let's do a simulation. So we hired a contractor. I believe this was Chartwell. Fantastic job. We were using World Construction Set was the software tool being used. And, again, it looks great, right? But does the model actually mirror what's happening in the field? So we did some post-harvest photography, and there it is. So I kind of giggle at this stuff because we actually had to take the actual photos, print them, and then slice them and put them together with masking tape on the back. So there it is. I think it does a very good job. The computer model does a very good job of simulating what was going to happen in the field. And of course, the field conditions are always going to be slightly different. And I think that's something that we have to remember as practitioners, is that the model is just the model. And please emphasize that with the public or the stakeholders or whoever you're referring your stuff with, because it's really important that they understand that it's just a model and the actual conditions may vary and most likely will vary. All right. So this was the public complaint. All right. So they looked at this harvesting and they felt that it exceeded what we had said we were going to do. Basically, it was formed around clear cutting and the fact that they didn't necessarily like the clear cutting. Again, we had a really good relationship, and quite honestly, to this day, I still have a very good relationship with the people that I dealt with there, and it's no problem to stop in and have a cup of coffee with them at the lake. So always welcome there. So I think at the end of the day, things all do work out. Here's what it looked like in the absolute worst case scenario, with snow on the ground and post-harvest. And again, through the investigation with the Forest Practices Board, we were found to have met the visual quality objective. So we got the gold star, if you will. And it felt good because ultimately we put a lot of effort into this. There was a bunch of people, a bunch of effort put into it, and everybody really tried hard to do the right thing. And at the end of the day, it turned out to be validated through that process. So for me, of course, it was very stressful. Knowing that you're under investigation, it's hard not to take it personal. I did, and it's a growth opportunity is all I can say. And it was very early in my career. I was very young, and I've since been through several other investigations and processes that have challenged me. And ultimately, I'd say, bring it on. I love it. It's there's always lessons learned, and it's a great process to go through. Now, just as a point of interest, we use this landscape design manual as sort of our Bible, if you will. And on page 83, it talks about this very exact same landform that we were operating on. And so, it was in the manual, and you can look, I don't know if it shows up in the video or not, but there's a ton of red trees in there. So mountain pine beetle had come through in the late 90s and actually hit this area really hard. So that's actually what we were targeting, was the pine beetle for salvage. This is pre-epidemic days. And so we were actually going after some forest health concerns. And again, none of this stuff is, simple because it's forestry, right? There's so many things that we have to consider. So anyway, if you look at that open area up at the top there, there it is again. And here we are again, post-harvest, looking at that landform. Here's where we logged, 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 and one more time, there it is. So again, I think we could have logged a lot more out of this landform. At the same time, we were trying to take a cautionary approach, and I think we did the right thing. And I know this is like almost 20 years ago. I know that there has been subsequent harvest in this landform since then with licensees in the area. So sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith and trust the process and know that it's there to serve you and the public. And ultimately, it's a great thing to go through. So take that leap. It's a good thing. Now, let's move it to something that's more current. Logging violations cut through scenic mountainside in Port Alberni. Twice. So, what's happened here? Well, the Forest Practices Board initiated their own investigation here, all right? Now, this is the investigation, all right? September 2016. So what happened? Well, question everything, as Albert Einstein would say. There's the three questions that the Forest Practices Board wanted to ask. The first one was, did the licensee comply with the legislation? The second one was, did they adequately consider the resource value, in this case, visuals? And the third one was the government's actions, or lack of, responsible for this. So anyway, let's look at these questions. First thing, this is a no-brainer. This is not partial retention. The visual quality objective for this landform was partial retention. Nowhere, no way, no how is this partial retention. I know there's a lot of ambiguity within this niche of visual resource management. I know it. I get it. But nothing tells me that this is even close to partial retention. So it's a no-brainer. Okay, did the licensee comply with the legislation? Well, through their investigation, and I want you to read this, you'll see that clearly not. All right, second question, did they adequately manage the resource value? Well, I think I've already mentioned that. It's not even close to partial retention, so no, not even close. Third question, was the government's actions responsible, or their enforcement? And again, I want you to read this, okay? It's very interesting. At the end of the day, compliance and enforcement took no action in this case. So no, the findings in the report say no, that it was not responsible. So question everything. Remember Albert Einstein, all right? The board in here Where is it? Oh, yeah. This is the fourth board report published since 2014 that has identified issues with visual resource management. Yikes. That's not good, folks. Wake up. We need to understand what we're doing out there. And I know it's not easy, but we can't continue down the path we're on because it's going to mean trouble. All right? Okay, so let's leave the last words to Tim Ryan, Forest Practices Board Chair. I'm just going to read it to you. Once the board sees a potential non-compliance, we can initiate our own investigation. We don't have to wait for a public complaint. Now, that is a very, very important point because it's important to understand that, in this case, that's exactly what happened. They saw something was offside, and it was clearly offside, so they've launched their own investigation. There needs to be a renewed emphasis and awareness of visual quality. Either we manage for visuals as we've committed to the public and other important values, or we don't do it. That's it. End of story. So good on Tim Ryan to be bold and blunt. We don't need to be hiding around things. And as a point of interest, I have a deep respect for Mr. Ryan. He was the chief forester at Ainsworth when we were under investigation back with the early example I just shared. So I know Tim, and I respect him dearly. And the fact that he's come out with this clear and concise finding is very important, very, very important. And I can't wait to see what happens. Now, the epilogue to this is, and I'm just going to read it here. In accordance, this is out of the report. Okay, in accordance with Section 132 of FERPA, the board requests that the government advise it of the steps taken to implement recommendations 1 to 3 by December 31st, 2016, and that the ABCFP do so for recommendations 2 by December 31st, 2016. So that's just expired, that timeline, and I'm going to do my utmost best to get, see if I can get my hands on, like a dog with a bone, I see if I can get my hands on these responses to the board that would have came out at the end of 2016. So what I would like you to do, what you need to do next is go ahead, download the Forest Practices Board Special Investigation Report for Port Alberni and read it. There's so much content in there. It's rich, and I think that we're going to have some great conversations in the training. I'm Garnet Miro, and I look forward to seeing you in the training session.